Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at new cards featured within Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, the anime, and this is from episode 46. Haniwaffle is a level 2 Earth attribute Pyro type normal monster with 800 attack and 200 defense. As a note, this card's name is a play on Honey, Haniwa, which is a level 2, I think it's an Earth attribute fairy type monster with 600 attack and 500 defense, and a combination of Waffle. The design of the card and the artwork looks decent, but again, it's a very weak normal monster, and it's going to be very forgettable. Dogulche Lingue de Chakouki is a level 5 Earth attribute Pyro type effect monster with 1700 attack and 0 defense. Its requirement is you can activate the turn this card is summoned. The effect to send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. If there is a monster that's a level 6 or higher Pyro type among them, choose one monster that's a level 6 or higher Pyro type in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Basically what this card does is it helps to mill through your deck, and if you happen to have one of those monsters that meets this condition, you're then able to search for that card back to the hand. It's a decent effect, but actually outside of milling, unless there's a very powerful Pyro type monster that meets this condition, it's a little bit too forgettable and very niche, especially since you have to tribute to even summon this card. Dogulche Jomont Blanc is a level 6 Earth attribute Pyro type normal monster with 1900 attack, and it mentions that the defense is unknown, but it's likely to be quite weak. It's a decent enough monster for its stat lineup, but then again, as Rushals gets progressively stronger, this is going to be outclassed very quickly. Doki Hexenhause is a level 7 Earth attribute Pyro type effect monster with 2300 attack and 2100 defense. The requirement: you can activate the turn this card is normal summoned, and the effect is to choose one normal monster that's level 7 or lower Pyro type in your graveyard, then special summon it to your side of the field face up. So I seem to understand how this archetype likes to work. Basically, what you want to do is you want to try and search into this monster. You want to then normal summon this monster, hopefully having pitched some of your other lower monsters to the graveyard beforehand, and then you're able to then special summon one of them to encourage and to facilitate your existing game state and your existing monster board. It's a decent effect for some kind of niche form of swarming within the archetype, but outside of that, it's very forgettable. It does say here as a note this card's name is a play on doki, which is the sound of a heartbeat. Doki, which is earthenware. Hexenhause is also the name, which is in German for gingerbread house. So the basis is a little bit around the kind of Hansel and Gretel storyline. Dry Fruit De-kako-ration is a normal spell card with the requirement: you can activate by shuffling 4 monsters, they must be Earth attribute Pyro types, from your graveyard into the deck. The effect: until the end of the turn, all face-up monsters you currently control, which are Earth attribute Pyro types, gain 800 attack. Then you gain 800 life points. The attack boost is quite decent because actually that's happening to all of those monsters that meet that condition. And then you're also gaining 800 life points that will help you survive that little bit longer, and it might be able to OTK your opponent in that turn. It also acts as a bit of a pot of avarice effect. The requirement isn't really a cost to you, more so it helps to replenish your deck. It mentions here as part of the note that Dry Fruit is being written out in kanji as a certain way, as do-re furutsu visitation plus ancient plus avenge/attack, and kaku means past. Battle Ox Tongue is a level 3 fire attribute beast type, a normal monster with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. It says here as the note this card's name is a play on Tanshao, which is salted beef tongue, and Minotaurus, which is the Japanese name for battle ox. In other words, it's supposed to be a weaker form of the original battle ox. It's an okay card, but other than being like a different version of the card, it's quite forgettable. You have Archfiend Marmot of Nefaribousness, which is a level 4 fire attribute beast type normal monster. It's got 1500 attack and 0 defense. This is actually one of the more powerful forms of these Archfiend Marmots. The original one is a level 2 monster. It's an Earth attribute beast type, which has 400 attack and 600 defense, if I'm remembering correctly. And at least you're getting an example of a card which has been upgraded, which is quite strange. Usually rush doors tend to weaken the monster rather than power them up. But it's fine, it's a fire attribute alternative version, if you will. And the other card is called, well, this says as well, the note is, this card's name is a play on galbi gui, a grilled beef short rib dish, and Damon Beaver, the Japanese name for Archfiend Marmot of Nefaribousness. The next card is Roastic Horseman. It's a level 3 fire attribute beast type normal monster with 1,200 attack and 800 defense. Again, this is very much a play on Mystic Horseman, which was a card used within the original Yu-Gi-Oh series. I think it was used by Seto Kaiba, and that had 1,300 attack and 1,500 defense. It was a level 4 monster and is another example of a card they're kind of trying to replenish in a different form. Harami Kushirou, the Shichirin Samurai, is a level 7 fire attribute beast type effect monster with 2,200 attack and 900 defense. The requirement is during the turn this card is normal summoned. You can activate if there are 7 or more monsters. They must be fire attribute in your graveyard. The effect is to destroy all face-up monsters level 8 or lower with 2,500 attack or more your opponent controls. This is very specific because it both requires the level requirement and it requires your opponent's monsters to be of a certain attack or more. The tendency is the lower the level, the lower the attack stat, but you do have some exceptions to that. There are also some ways that monsters your opponent controls can dodge this effect. For example, Red Eyes Black Dragon is the one that I remember that will meet just under this condition so it won't be destroyed, and can therefore destroy this card in battle the next turn, because it's a level 7 monster and it's got 2,400 attack. It meets the level requirement of this card, but it actually just underpins just slightly under its attack limit by being 2,400 attack. The requirement on this card is also a little bit hefty. You do need to have 7 or more fire attribute monsters in the graveyard to even trigger this effect. I know you can technically tribute summon this monster by getting rid of 2 monsters, therefore you're already putting fire attributes into the graveyard potentially, but it's a lot of setup for very limited reward. It mentions here that harami is a cut of meat in cow based on the thinner side of the diaphragm. A Shichirin is a Japanese grill, and a kushi is a spit or a skewer with ro meaning wolf, so that's how its name is translated. Wild Kitchen is a field spell card with the requirement you can activate this card if you control 3 face-up fire attribute monsters. The effect is while this face-up card is in the field zone, face-up monsters that are fire attribute on the field gain 300 attack. It's a decent enough effect and it's an okay boost, but actually I prefer the field spell Molten Destruction. I don't think that card is currently in the game as of yet, but it basically does the same thing. It actually increases your fire attributes by 500 attack points, but it lowers their defense by 400 defense. Burning Beast Quality is a normal spell card with a requirement you can activate by shuffling 1 monster that must be a beast type from your graveyard into your deck. The effect: until the end of the turn, face-up monsters that are fire attribute on the field gain 100 attack times the number of face-up monsters that are fire attribute on the field. So I don't think this card is actually going to be that useful. It does require you to actually return one of your beast-type monsters to the deck, so you can probably reuse it at some point, considering it's actually shuffled into the deck and not stacked to the bottom of it. The effect actually only gives you a very minor boost, depending on how many fire monsters you actually happen to have and your opponent. Potentially, if you've got a full field and your opponent, that's up to 600 additional attack points for all of your monsters. And considering it's all face-up monsters that are fire attribute, that would actually boost your opponents as well, which is a disadvantage of it. The other thing is, realistically, you're maybe going to be able to get 200 attack points, if that. And the final card is called Just Meat. It's a normal spell card with the requirement you can activate if you control a face-up Harami Kushirou, the Shichirin Samurai. Its effect is to send the top 4 cards of your deck to the graveyard. If you sent 4 monsters that are beast type with fire attribute to the graveyard with this effect, choose 1 monster on the field. That monster gains 2,900 attack until the end phase. So I can kind of understand what this deck is trying to do. Basically, that boss monster is trying to make itself as bulky as possible. If you can boost it with some of these cards, then, for example, it will become over 5,000 attack points with this effect. It is also a bit conditional, considering that you do have to send 4 monsters with very specific types and a very specific attribute to the graveyard. So unless you can top deck your deck for 4 cards, you cannot really rely on this card. It's a very limited opportunity to actually meet this condition. Though, if you can do it, it's definitely a way you can OTK your opponent. It mentions as the note this card's name is a play on Just Meat. Wasigo, which is the Japanese equivalent of an English term for hitting a ball squarely. It grants 2,900 attack because the number 29 sounds like meat in Japanese. Of this type of deck, I think actually I can see why it would work, but it needs a lot more support before it can actually be deemed as an archetype. Whereas, unfortunately, because it's not a main character, it might not get that much support going into the future. Generally, what do you think of these archetypes? Is there anything you like out of these? Is there anything you consider playing? Or do you think these are quite limited and restricted at the moment and are waiting to see what further support comes down the line? Whatever you think, leave those comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.